Without another word, not trusting himself to speak, not trusting himself to betray the ecstasy in his heart, the mighty thunder god turns and steps out upon the window ledge with an easy stride, and then, with blinding bursts of speed, Thor hurls himself into the sky, his heart bursting with joy, his very lungs aching to cry out in sheer happiness. She loves me! She loves me!
Whoever holds this hammer, if it be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Across the Bifrost, the Mighty Thor podcast, where we explore the world of Marvel's Mighty Thor. I am, as always, your host, Ryan Doze, and on today's show, we cover the latest 3 issues in our throwback series. We are going to be getting some awesome returns and a fun first appearance of a brand new villain in Thor's Rogues Gallery today, and joining me aboard the Rainbow Bridge to break down all 3 of these issues is my dear friend Eric Fisher. He is stopping by to talk some comics with us and just adventure with us, banter with us, and have a great time. Before we get started today, I must encourage you, dear listener, dear person out there journeying aboard the Rainbow Bridge with us, if you would go rate, review, and subscribe to Across the Bifrost wherever you're finding this great podcast, we would greatly appreciate that. Your listenership is wanted, it's needed, and it's so meaningful to me. If you would go the extra mile, that would just be a cherry on top, the whipped cream on top of the sundae, the icing on top of the cake. It would be very appreciated. So if you would do that, that would be awesome. Thanks again, friends, for your listenership. Before we get started, I just want to encourage you again, those of you who have been waiting for a Facebook group or a Facebook page to engage with, we'll be getting that up in the next week so that we can just have more ways to engage with you and talk about the mighty Thor, his adventures, his characters, his world. We want to engage with you as many different ways as we can. That is our next milestone that we're going to be reaching next week. Until then, we are going to jump into the 3 issues of Journey into Mystery that Eric and I had the pleasure of covering this last week, and I hope you enjoy this journey.
Cross the rainbow bridge of Asgard, where the booming heavens roar. You'll behold in breathless wonder the god of thunder, mighty Thor.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of our throwback series. I am joined by returning guest and Marvel Comics extraordinaire, Eric Fisher, my good friend from here in my realm, which is also Eric's realm. Whew, man, I'm not gonna lie, listeners, I'm feeling a little, I'm feeling good, I'm feeling goofy tonight. This has been a long recording session, but Eric is here to talk about comics, and he hails from what realm? Eric, what realm of the 9 realms do you hail from?
Midgard, right?
Correct. Nebraska of Midgard fame. We're back, and Eric, you joined us a while back for I believe we talked a bunch of Zarko stories last time we were graced by you. Well, tonight we are going to talk about Hyde, Cobra, and we get a fantastic first appearance by an under-celebrated villain of the Marvel Universe, the Grey Gargoyle. So we will cover him in just a few minutes after we have talked through Journey into Mystery, number 105. This issue is entitled The Cobra and Mr. Hyde. The creative team on this issue, it was written by Happy Stan Lee. It was drawn by Healthy Jack Kirby. It was inked by Husky Chick Stone. Yikes. It was lettered hastily by Artie Simic. I love reading these descriptions of the creative teams and how Stan Lee would he would try to build the characters of not only the superheroes and supervillains, but also the creators. I thought those are just very well done. Also, I never miss an opportunity to tell listeners that Chick Stone is the greatest name in Marvel Comics.
The husky chick still.
It's and hey, I feel like it would work with me if I'm Husky Ryan Doze, much like Husky Chick Stone. So we'll jump into the synopsis for this issue. A lovesick Thor confronts his feelings for Jane Foster under the guise of Dr. Donald Blake. Thor dreams of the life he could lead. Jane believes Dr. Blake does not love her, and he remains distant. In his office, Thor, as Dr. Blake, is attacked by Cobra and Mr. Hyde. So, just on first glance, Eric, notice how the issue is entitled The Cobra and Mr. Hyde, but the entire description is Jane and Dawn, Jane and Dawn, Jane and Dawn. Oh, yeah, and also the human Cobra and Hyde show up.
Yeah.
It's our love story is front and center on this issue. There are no significant first appearances in this issue, dear listener, but we will go page by page through this issue. Eric, what were some of your first impressions of this issue, kind of just going into it? Last time you were on, we covered some Zarko stories, and those were just legendary issues that everyone should go out and read. I say, of course, sarcastically. These issues, the Hyde and Cobra issues, what were some of your first impressions of them?
105. I think it's within the first 3 pages you get that little treat of Giant Man and Wasp. A little.
Oh my goodness.
That we enjoy so much.
We'll get to Hank Pym. Oh goodness. So speaking of the first few pages, Eric, let us jump aboard the Rainbow Bridge and into this journey into mystery. We, on the first page, the opening splash page, we see our descriptions of the creators. We see the big title, the dynamically drawn title of the issue, and the Avengers are finishing up a meeting, because they do this very regularly now. It's like their own little clubhouse that they're finishing up this meeting, and some odd conversations happen on pages 1 and 2. Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp, who Thor does not know is Janet Van Dyne, because the Avengers do not know each other's identities at this point.
I was just going to mention that.
What was that?
I was just going to mention that because I found that it didn't occur to me until I read it in this issue that they, at this point in time, they didn't know each other's identities. I mean, other than Captain America, right? Because
yes. Because Steve Rogers is the original American hero, of course. Right. Janet asks Thor a question that is very leading. Janet says, "Do you have a girlfriend, Thor?" And Hank, ever the empathetic male love interest, says, "Hush, Wasp. You know our code. None of us is to pry into the personal lives of any of the others." It's like, yikes, man. Calm down. Just a simple question. Hank gets a little bit of a ego trip there, bossing Janet around, and then the meeting disperses, and the panel that Eric referred to happens in the middle of page 2. It has nothing to do with Thor, but it has everything to do with Hank Pym being a giant man butthead. Hank said they're flying away on their ants. And Eric, do you have the issue open in front of you?
I don't.
Well, then I will read it for both you and the listeners to enjoy. Hank Pym says, because they ask, how did they know that to have the ants, ready to go? Janet didn't want her wings to get tired. And Hank says, "I had them waiting outside the window, Jan. I wanted to surprise you." Oh, what a romantic Romeo you are. And then Janet says, "Some surprise. Other girls get flowers, candies, and jewelry, and I get a flying ant. Yes, Janet. You partnered up with the wrong guy if you wanted those things.
Is it a surprise by this point? That's the real
Yeah, that is a good point. Is she knows that she's in a romantic relationship with a guy who's really into bugs, and she's surprised that she got a bug for a surprise. Oh my god! I feel like flowers, candy, and jewelry would have been the real surprise. So we see Thor fly away, and he's going on patrol. And as he's on patrol, he runs into the Cobra. The Cobra throws some kind of Cobra dart at him that blinds Thor, and the Cobra escapes. And he crawls in the window of an apartment belonging to one Dr. Calvin Zabo, who we know by another name, Mr. Hyde. Thor is pursuing the Cobra, but he doesn't really know where the Cobra has gone. And as the Cobra sneaks into Zabo's apartment, Zabo doesn't see him at first, but he is alerted that there's an intruder, and he turns himself into the villainous monster, Mr. Hyde. And the two share a quick little skirmish and fight until they both find out that they desire to defeat the mighty Thor. So, Eric, we're introduced to the two villains of this issue. Just briefly bring listeners kind of up to speed on your thoughts on Hyde and Cobra, these villains that have shown up so far in the Silver Age, and they will show up several times in the continuing issues of this run of Thor.
Yeah, admittedly, my knowledge on Cobra is significantly less than that of Mr. Hyde.
Okay, so then what of Mr. Hyde?
Well, so it didn't occur to me how closely tied Mr. Hyde was to Thor until I started reading through these books. And he's faced both of these guys earlier on in Journey into Mystery too.
Yes.
But like I said, the previous fight with Cobra was far less memorable than I guess Mr. Hyde was to me for some reason. And
Yeah.
still to this day, Mr. Hyde stands out. Like I could probably hazard to guess what Cobra's name was if you just showed me a picture of him, but I wouldn't know like his real name or anything like that.
I don't think that Klaus Voorhees, the dreaded human Cobra, would appreciate the shade that you have thrown his way. But Mr. Hyde definitely has preserved into the modern era much more significantly than the human Cobra. You're right there. With the human Cobra, I kind of picture him talking like Cobra Commander from G.I. Joe. I obviously they can't write voices into this, but it kind of, as a reader, I have a little more fun with it when I picture him in that high, snivelly, raspy voice. When the two villains realize that they have more in common than they might have thought previously, Cobra says, "Well then, you shall not fight Thor alone. He is my enemy too. Alone, each of us has almost beaten him. Together, we cannot fail." That is a high compliment for yourself, Mr. Cobra. And Hyde responds with, "The Cobra and Mr. Hyde. And you are right. Why fight each other when we could join forces and conquer Thor?" So clearly they're on the same page for this issue. We jump back to the doctor's office of Dr. Blake, where Thor has arrived and is making up some excuse as to why he was in his lab all day. And Jane and him have an exchange of what I've called an exchange of thought bubbles, where they just don't know what to think of each other. They both proclaim that they love the other, but the other one doesn't love them back. That very soap opera dramatic tone in these panels. And we jump back to Hyde and Cobra, they're coming up with their plan to defeat Thor, and they start off their plan by distracting Thor with a public display of tyranny. Hyde attacks a jewelry store, and Don Blake hears about it on the radio. He transforms into Thor. He jumps into action, and he chases Hyde through the crowd. We come into the second aspect of the plan, where Cobra is off on a building side with an invention that Hyde has created called, oh my goodness, I cannot remember what the invention is called. It is a time reversal ray. The time reversal ray, basically, they'll use it to shoot the ray at Thor, and then it will reverse time so that they can find out where Thor has originated from. They find out that Thor has come from the office of Dr. Don Blake. And Hyde and Cobra go to Don Blake's office just as Don has made a little bit of a proclamation to himself. He says on page 11, "If Thor may not marry a mortal girl, Dr. Blake may. All I have to do is give up my other identity. Never become Thor again, but I give it up? There's only one way to find out. I'll lock my cane in the steel cabinet for a full day. No matter what happens, I won't retrieve it, and without it, I cannot become the God of Thunder." There's a few things that I'd like to talk about here, Eric, with him locking his cane away.
I thought it was going to be the panel where Cobra has his ankles up by his head.
You know what? You're completely right. We need to talk about the Cobra's delightful dexterity first and foremost. He is just drawn weird. He's drawn like Gumby.
In both of these books, 105 and 106, there are some alarming panels of his contortionist abilities.
He's just an odd looking villain, and he's not even on the panel that Eric is referring to on page 10 of this issue of Journey into Mystery. He's not even hanging on to the wall at all. Like, his arms are attached to the time reversal ray, and his ankles are just laying on the side of the building. It's like, Cobra, how are you attached to this building, man? It's just truly, that's your superpower. Just adhesively stuck to these buildings. It's fantastic. The proclamation that Don Blake makes, he's like, "I will never become Thor again." Okay, Don, but can I give it up? He almost feels like someone who's quitting smoking. He's like, I can stop being Thor anytime I want. I can quit cold turkey. I'll just, I'll lock my magical enchanted cane in the cabinet, and I'll just never become Thor again. And he gives himself the date of one day. For one day, he will not become Thor, no matter what happens. Well,
never mind.
Last panel and a half, or page and a half. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Eric. Never
mind the fact that Don Blake is portrayed up to this point as being lame, quote unquote lame.
I didn't even pick up on that. Oh my goodness.
That's like a defining factor of who Don Blake is that he's this broken doctor that needs a cane to walk. But, if he's not going to be Thor anymore, I guess he doesn't need to be physically impaired anymore either.
I would rather have the love of Jane Foster than be able to walk upstairs. But we see almost immediately after Don Blake has locked his cane away, Hyde and Cobra show up, and Jane is returning back to the office, and she is taken hostage and she's taken kidnapped by Hyde and the Cobra. They interrogate Don Blake to tell them where Thor is, and Don plays these two geniuses, these two scientists who have turned into supervillains. He just completely bamboozles them with his plan. Don says on page 13, "Very well, I will tell you. Open the locked steel cabinet behind you, and I'll tell you where you can find Thor." So here's something about Don. "I will go a full day without Thor. More like, I will go a full minute without becoming Thor. And Hyde gets the cane out, and he is Hyde is actually the one that stamps the cane down on the ground, and then Don Blake becomes Thor. And of course, there's three other people in the room with the gift of eyesight, and none of them see Don Blake become Thor. So Thor fights with Hyde and Cobra, and they move their fight out to the street, and Thor pursues Hyde all the way into the machine show. Along the way, Hyde just causes so much destruction. He's really he's a menace to infrastructure everywhere. And when they are in the machine show, I would really like to know, Eric, just some of your opinions on the Jack Kirby drawings in the machine show. Just phenomenal stuff. What did you think about Jack's ability to draw these machines and these very detailed mechanical creations?
It's interesting. It's an interesting plot piece, isn't it? Like, not only is there a nondescript machine show happening down the street, but both of these villains know how to operate these machines expertly.
Of course. They're smart enough to figure out complex machinery, but not smart enough to figure out that Don Blake and Thor are the same people.
Or just turn around instead of following the advice of the doctor that just told him to look out the window.
My goodness. Just true. They're villainous buffoons. On the last page of this issue, the cliffhanger ending is given to us where Cobra grabs one of the machines and kind of a big crane, and it is able to remove the hammer from the hand of Thor, and Thor just exclaims, "My hammer!" And the hammer is, sucked up into the machine, and we're given that ultimatum that Thor often has of 60 seconds, and I will no longer be Thor. I will revert back to Don Blake. There is one panel on this last page, Eric, I just wanted to draw particular attention to. The top left panel is Thor. Hyde has thrown a machine, a piece of some debris at Thor, and Thor blocks the machine being thrown at him with the hammer, and it's a red and yellow explosion around Thor. It's just truly a great kinetic panel drawn by Jack Kirby. It's almost cosmic in the way it's done, but there's no stars, there's no sunburst, there's no rainbow bridge. It's just drawn very well, and it was one of the panels in this issue that particularly caught my attention.
Yeah, it seems like at least once or twice in these old issues you're treated to those Jack Kirby frame, where he really just goes to town and just kind of really puts it all out on the page, and it's pretty cool. I joke a lot about the old issues and the old art and stuff, but you can't deny Jack Kirby art, for what it is.
Yeah, I mean, truly, it belongs in art galleries. It's so well done. So we conclude this issue, this cliffhanger issue of Journey to Mystery 105, the Cobra and Mr. Hyde. Eric, would you have listeners read this or leave this? And tell us why you would diagnose the issue either way.
I think if, kind of like you and I have been, if you're going back and you're getting back into Journey into Mystery, I can say most of these issues I've never read before, right? Until fairly recently. If you're getting back into these old issues, it's probably a read, because like I said, you don't really understand how closely tied to Thor Mr. Hyde is until you get back into these old issues and realize, wow, they really had this rivalry for quite a while.
It plays out many times in these early Silver Age comics. You're right.
Yeah, and like I said, I had no idea that they were that closely knit together. And in both issues, 105 and 106, Thor has some very creative and very elaborate descriptors for Mr. Hyde and how evil he is. Whereas
Yes.
with Cobra, he just kind of treats him like this goofball.
Yeah.
But with Mr. Hyde, he's very, very attentive in the way that he describes how evil Mr. Hyde is.
You can definitely tell since this is the first time that Hyde and Cobra have teamed up, and they'll team up in upcoming issues very frequently. Actually, you can tell that Hyde is the one, and Cobra is the two.
Right.
Hyde is the one that is calling most of the shots. He is the stronger one of the two. He is the more gifted intellectually, and Cobra feels a little bit like a sidekick. But the team of Hyde and Cobra will return in our next issue of Journey into Mystery, number 106. The Thunder God Strikes Back. My goodness, I just could not think of a more lame parody of The Empire Strikes Back than this. I read that title and I was like, man, I'm so glad that George Lucas redeemed the Strikes Back titling mechanism there. The creative team on this issue of Journey into Mystery, it's the same as the last time, but I want to read the descriptions that were given on this opening splash page. This issue of Journey into Mystery was written fairly well by Stan Lee. It was drawn not too badly by Jack Kirby. It was inked kind of nice by Chick Stone, and it was lettered pretty fair by Art Simic. So Stan Lee obviously showing off some of his self-deprecating humor there, and a little bit of his entertainment value when people would open up these issues of Journey into Mystery and Marvel Comics in the Silver Age. The synopsis of this issue: Mr. Hyde and Cobra continue to give Thor trouble, and when they prevent him from switching in and out of his human form, during the battle, Dr. Blake is able to apprehend both villains, but must identify Thor as a vigilante god to protect his identity. Back at the office, Jane feels betrayed by Dr. Blake as she knows Thor to be a hero. How much longer can Thor live this double life? The suspense is building. How much longer can Thor live this double life, Eric? We'll find out in this issue of Journey into Mystery. Page 1 is the opening splash page, and we see the villains closing in on Thor, and it begins our recap. On page 2, we get a recap of everything that happened last issue. I do find it interesting that they can perfectly encapsulate the story from last issue in one page, but they feel no remorse in taking 19 pages to tell us this one-page story. So these recaps, Eric, do you find these recaps helpful as we reread them, or is it more of a thing of the age? As these comics were coming out, obviously people couldn't just run down to a comic book store and grab back issues for them.
I think they're it's funny, like you said, it's funny that they can do 3 or 4 panels of recap and give you basically what you need in order to continue. But yeah, I think I like them. I like them for that value alone, just because you kind of look at them and you're like, well, okay, I guess I didn't need to read that last issue.
But we do need to continue on in this rousing part 2 of the Hyde and Cobra, their latest attempt to defeat the mighty Thor. Thor, as the villains are closing in on him, he tears up the floor and he escapes into the crowd to avoid transforming back into Don Blake in view of his adversaries. Then on page 4, while he is in the crowd, Don transforms, Thor transforms back into Don amidst the hectic crowd, and he's trying to work to get his cane outside of the machine that Cobra had put it in last issue. Cobra had removed the hammer from the hand of Thor, and Hyde is chasing down Thor through this crowd, and he's trying to get to Thor, and he's calling out anyone to reveal where Thor is. Meanwhile, outside on page 5, the police have surrounded the building, and Cobra is starting to second guess their plan because the cops have showed up. And Hyde goes full bore. He's just pushing through, and Don is still attempting to grab his cane out of the machine. And kind of the last little bit of this segment of the issue, Hyde tells Thor to reveal himself on page 6, and Don Blake comes out of the crowd and he says that he will give up Thor if he can get his cane back. Now, I'm just going to do a little bit of retrospective here, Eric, and you feel free to straighten out my logic in any ways you feel needs to be. These villains are so foolish with this man and his cane. The last time they retrieved his cane from the steel cabinet, Thor showed up. So obviously, if they get his cane back, they know Thor is going to show up. They have not put the two biggest obvious pieces together, that Don Blake is Thor and the cane is important. So maybe Hyde and Cobra don't deserve to beat Thor.
But it is nice of him to keep getting his cane back for him.
They are true gentleman villains. They're always willing to help Dr. Blake in the process of Thor beating them to a pulp. On page 9, Hyde, they've retrieved the cane from the machine. Cobra tries to get in there by slithering, through the machines. I'm sure those are some of the pages you referred to earlier where his limbs just don't make sense as they're going through this machine. It just there's one panel on page 7 where it's just really his back and his butt kind of hanging out of a tube, and you're not really sure how is he going to do this.
Oh yeah.
Hyde just rips the machine apart. He cuts out the middleman and he rips the machine apart, gives the cane back to Thor, or gives the cane to Don, and Don turns immediately back into Thor, and Hyde retreats into the crowd. Thor takes out the Cobra pretty easily, and Hyde comes back around to hit Thor with a giant air sprayer that would normally be used to just paint buildings. And Thor is taken out for a few seconds. Thunder God short circuits the machine with the electrical charge of his hammer. Then on page 11, we see the police storm the building. Hyde escapes for good out of the building. They take Cobra into custody, and Thor is not satisfied. He's continuing his search for the menacing Mr. Hyde. Thor, Cobra, like we said earlier, Cobra is taken out of the equation. He's kind of featured as the sidekick. Like Eric said, he's a little bit more of the forgettable one of the two. But Hyde escapes. We're done with the machine show. Eric, up until this point, what are just kind of this fight scene that we've seen unfold at the machine show? Any panels that kind of stuck out to you during this fight scene?
I really liked the one where Thor rips the floor off, tears the floor. And he says something like, "This steel floor, I can rip this steel floor up like paper," or something like that.
Let me read it verbatim, and maybe we'll put some Stanley Stank on it. Power which enables me to lift a section of this steel flooring as though it were made of paper. He says this after, even without the power of my hammer, have they forgotten the power of the mighty Thor? He is nothing if not a self-promoter. My goodness.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that singular image of him tearing that floor panel up.
Yeah, it's another very dynamic drawing where they're almost it's not, obviously it's not 3D, it's not drawn in that way, but it almost appears kinetic in the energy. You can almost hear what that would sound like if you were in the room, this metal creaking, and Thor just really exerting his power and his strength on
I get the feeling that Kirby probably really enjoyed panels like that, like the one you said with the explosion,
yes.
and then this
Yes.
one where he's carrying a huge piece of floor up. Like that had to have been fun to draw.
Because they're panels, we've talked about this in the past. They're panels that are drawn with motion. And as dumb as that might sound, there are some panels that stand out and you feel it. You feel the movement, the goal that he had as an artist to make us feel like that was actually happening. And it's coming at us in a way. There's a few panels even towards the end where we'll get that same kind of vibe. But on page 14, Hyde Zabo has turned back into Hyde as he follows Thor, who is patrolling the streets to find the one villain that he has not defeated yet, the villain that he needs to defeat to have the matching set. He encounters Thor again. They fight, and the hammer is knocked loose from Thor's grip. And Thor has a great thought bubble here where he kind of just comes to says here on page 14, a startling decision. Thor thinks, let it lie. If I cannot defeat this evil villain barehandedly within 1 minute, I am not worthy of the name of Thor. So Thor just decides, hey, that hammer that I worked so hard to get back, I don't even need it now. So he goes to fight Hyde, and they crash through some apartment buildings, and there's a water heater that's the radiator heater that's thrown at him. I thought that was a fun little bit of scenery that gets tossed Thor's way. Hyde tears apart a staircase, and they just kind of tussle and wrestle through the streets for a few pages, and then Thor finally swings Hyde towards the police, and they're able to apprehend him. Thor says on page 17, let me grasp thee, referring to the hammer, my beloved Uru mallet. Let me feel thy heft. Together we are as noble Odin would will it. We are invincible. He's very aware of his own power, especially in this issue. Then we come to the last page, and the melodrama between Don Blake and Jane Foster is back. Jane is convinced that Don is a coward because Don ratted out Thor, and to her, he has betrayed Thor, who has saved both her and Don so many times. She is angry with him, and Don even says on this last page, I thought this was a very good panel. As Thor, I am forbidden to love a mortal woman, and now, even as Don Blake, I have lost the girl I desire. Thus, even in victory, I am defeated. Is loneliness and sorrow the price I must pay for being Thor, the god of thunder? So, Eric, any final impressions on Journey into Mystery 106 before we ask you the ever important question, would you read this or would you leave this?
So as we were talking, it reminded me of one thing I did think of when I was reading 106. And
Absolutely.
it kind of plays out in 105 too. The number of times that Thor changes back to Donald Blake in these two issues, back and forth from Don to Thor, back into Don, back into Thor. And in 106, it's kind of interesting because he does it again, not by choice, obviously, but Hyde changes back into Calvin to hide from Thor, and then he
Yes.
tracks him down and changes back into Hyde. It was just something that kind of made me think for a minute. Like, that's a kind of a, I don't know, kind of a strange dynamic that I don't know if that was a purposeful thing, you know.
Well, I think it's a very good tactic. I mean, you're right. They do kind of mirror each other in that way that Zabo and Blake can both, they both have these powerful alter egos, and the transformation back and forth is almost used as the strategy for both of them during these issues. That's, you know, fa- fantastic as always, Eric. A very good pickup there. Thank you for that, worthy inclusion.
Yeah, like I said, it was just kind of a cool little tidbit that was in there that I didn't really think of until I was finished reading it, and then I was thinking back on it before we started talking, that it was just kind of a neat little side.
Yeah, a very good pickup. Would you suggest that listeners read this or leave this?
I think if you read 105, you kind of have to read 106, right?
Yes.
Um, if you didn't read 105, you got that full page recap right there.
Right? You know what? Just don't read 105. Read 106 and you'll have everything you need for a complete story.
No, I mean, it's hard to say don't read it, because if you don't read it and you just do the recap, you miss out on a lot of great artwork and a lot of kind of amusing uh, thought bubbles from both Thor and Donald Blake and Jane Foster. Not to mention Hank and Janet. You got
Oh my goodness. Don't. We, much like one of our other frequent guests, Dan the Articulator, does not appreciate the work of one Tony Stark. I cannot say that Eric and I have appreciated the work of one Hank Pym. My goodness, what a colossal jerk. So let's move on swiftly to Journey into Mystery 107, When the Grey Gargoyle Strikes. This is a really great issue, first appearance of Paul Pierre Duval, the Grey Gargoyle. But first, we should share with you who the creative team on this issue was. As always, we will read it in Stan Lee's descriptions, and we'll get a kick out of those. This issue of Journey into Mystery was written by Stan Lee, who really needs the money. It was drawn by Jack Kirby, who enjoys the practice. It was inked by Chick Stone, who loves publicity. And it was lettered by Art Simic, whoever he is. Oh my gosh. I have noticed that throughout early Silver Age comics, Stan Lee does like to have a little bit of fun with the letterers, because they saw this and they're like, you're gonna make me say that? You're gonna make me put those letters in there and write that out? Come on, Stan. Jeez, man. But yeah, Stan, being like we've said, entertaining, and just showing off some of his penchant for pageantry and fun. The brief synopsis that we get for this issue of Journey into Mystery is Thor versus the Grey Gargoyle. Following the confusion over his identity, Thor attempts to stage reconciliation between Thor and Donald Blake for the sake of Jane. Dr. Blake becomes the sole hero in the battle with the Grey Gargoyle. So, as we've already said even a few times, we get a significant first appearance here. The first appearance of Paul Pierre Duval, aka the Grey Gargoyle. He is a French chemist who, courtesy of a chemical accident, gains the ability to turn anything to stone by touching it. Turning his body to stone, Duval dons a mask and a cape. He becomes a criminal with the alias the Grey Gargoyle. Duval, however, becomes a little bored with all of his achievements, and he sets his sight on the thunder god Thor, stealing his hammer Mjolnir to gain immortality. That's also just a little bit of a deeper synopsis into the issue itself. This issue does a really good job of fleshing out Duval's backstory. This is the first time that the Grey Gargoyle's stone spell changes in its consistency. So we'll look at this a little bit further in the actual issue. The Grey Gargoyle's stone touch has, through the years, had different time intervals. Sometimes it's a minute, and then the person, regains their normal form. Sometimes it's an hour. Like in this first appearance of the Grey Gargoyle, it's an hour, and then the subject or the item that he turns into stone reverts back to its regular form. Also, sometimes it has been portrayed the stone spell could last a day. So those are just a few little neat notes and facts about the Grey Gargoyle himself. But let's jump into the story that he is featured in, Journey into Mystery 107 with Thor. There's on the opening splash page on page 1, there's a great little box that is included where Stan is kind of just trying to sell up the epicness of this story. He says, "Settle back in a cozy, comfortable chair. Be sure you won't be interrupted for a while, and please don't read this if you're in a hurry, because you're really going to enjoy this one. Young and old, big and small, mighty Thor has fought them all. But this time he comes up against a fantastic foe whose power might even destroy the Thunder God himself. We think you'll flip over this newest sinister star, the Grey Gargoyle." So they're just, really, really trying to promote this villain as the next biggest threat to the mighty Thor. Jumping into the first few pages, Eric, what would just kind of, these first few pages, we get kind of Thor and his blissful love of Jane. What is kind of your first impressions of the beginning of this story?
I thought it was pretty funny, honestly. The whole Thor in love kind of.
Oh, so great.
She
loves me. She loves me.
He's just kind of floating through the city, screaming at people, trying to enjoy themselves.
He's flying through the air. She loves me. She will be mine somehow, some way. I will win her love. He flies through a park, and one guy on a bench is like, "Did you hear? Thor's in love." It's like, is that news? Are we so starved for news at this point? The panel of Thor flying backwards through the sky, proclaiming "She loves me, she loves me." I think that will probably become the album art for this episode. It's so good. It's so cheesy. It's so good. Okay, we jump into the origin story of the Grey Gargoyle in pages 4, 5, and 6. After he has landed in New York, and he's landed specifically at the JFK International Airport. Again, Stan Lee just grounding these stories in the world that often he's said it's the world outside your window. So he's grounding us a little bit, and Pierre Duval gets off of a plane, and the steward has found out that every other person on the plane has been turned into stone. Duval gets into a cab, and then he turns the cabbie into a stone statue, and in between those two occurrences of his stone touch, we get his backstory. So, Eric, let's talk a little bit about the backstory of the Grey Gargoyle. Give me kind of some of your first impressions of him as a villain. He's very Silver Age in tone and feel, but just what were your first impressions of him? The accident that makes him a villain, and then his aspiring his villainy. I would love to hear your opinions on his introduction.
It's not a bad origin. I mean, you can't. It's hard to go wrong with the scientist experimenting on himself. You got it with Mr. Hyde in the same way. Well, Hyde drinks the potion, which is always a questionable choice by a logical human being. But um,
Just don't drink anything that was in the lab, man.
but yeah, I thought it was all right. I thought it was a pretty good little synopsis of his origin story. Um, the reason for going evil is kind of out there, just uh, realizing that, oh, I could rob a jewelry store by turning the owner into stone for an hour.
Then I realized my stone touch enabled me to accomplish almost anything. All I needed to do was rob a store. All I needed to do was to rob a store was touch the proprietor. It's like, dude, why? Why you went from unfortunate unfortunate lab experiment gone wrong to, hey, how about I robbed a bunch of people? He gives up on his life of science very quickly.
Yeah.
And on page 6, we even see him reading a newspaper in this flashback with it's the Paris Post. He's reading, and while his butler serves him coffee, he proclaims that there's one thing that matters, the one thing I can accomplish with this awesome stone spell. I shall steal Thor's power of immortality. I don't know how he correlates the power of the hammer to the power of immortality, but he seems pretty convinced, and he heads off to America to fight the mighty Thor. On the cover of the paper that he's reading, the headline actually says, Thor's hammer flattens Cobra and Mr. Hyde in running battle. So it's a reference to the previous issues of Journey into Mystery. We jump over to page 7, and we see the police have discovered that the stone statue of the cabbie, it's an actual person, and Thor invokes the power. He invokes the authority of the Avengers on this page. It's so fantastic. He turns to a police officer and he says, "Officer, with the authority vested in me by the Avengers, I request permission to take this stone figure to Dr. Don Blake for detailed examination." The officer responds with, "Well, the Avengers have top federal priority, so he's all yours, big fella." It's like, who gives the Avengers jurisdiction just anywhere? That's a new fact about the Avengers we didn't know. They can basically do whatever they want in the 60s.
I thought it was funny too that the cabbie being turned to stone was the incident that got news, not the 40-something people on the plane.
Right? It's like, yeah, what can you do? They were from France. It's like, no, come on, man. Like, one New York cabbie gets turned into a statue. That's headline news. 40 people from France turned into fossils, and they're like, well, what can you do? We move over to the statue being delivered to Don Blake's office, and we see the Grey Gargoyle preparing to go and essentially make his powers known to Don Blake. There is a cool panel on page 9 after the Grey Gargoyle has confronted Blake, where he turns a paper airplane into stone. I thought that was a cool little page, and he throws it right past Don's face. I enjoyed that. I'm sorry, what was that, Eric?
I said I liked that one too. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's another front runner for the album art for this episode. Don is chased by the Grey Gargoyle out of his office because Thor must be brought into the fight for Don to not succumb to the stone touch of Grey Gargoyle. Goes up to the roof, and for a man who walks with a limp, Don sure can run fast. That seems like a convenient little omission of continuity there. And Thor goes to the top of the building, and he and Grey Gargoyle fight on top of the building. They then are fighting over the ledge, and there's a cool panel where Grey Gargoyle is hanging off of the building, And Thor throws the hammer down towards the street through the ledge, I believe, that Grey Gargoyle is hanging on to, and it just shatters it into a million pieces, and it's drawn very, very well. Grey Gargoyle falls to the ground, and the chase is on. The chase goes to a gas station where Grey Gargoyle starts a spark, and it explodes, and the hammer is disconnected from Thor, and the Gargoyle goes to lift it, but because of the enchantment that Odin had put on the hammer, he is unable to lift the hammer. But in the kind of the scuffle of Thor trying to get his hammer back and the Grey Gargoyle trying to lift it, he touches Thor with his stone touch. And then he escapes because the police officers have arrived to chase off the Grey Gargoyle. One of the officers has a fantastic line here that I would love to read for both Eric and the listeners. He's got a flamethrower attached to his back because all New York cops have flamethrowers attached to their backs. He says, "Turn the flamethrowers on him. They're the only things that can stop him. Flame can turn stone to lava." It's like, thanks for the science lesson, man. Let's just get this guy.
That's a heck of a flamethrower if you're turning stone into lava.
My goodness, it's just so campy and incredible, and I love it. Grey Gargoyle escapes, and as the statue of Thor, the stone statue of Thor, is just kind of falling, the hammer hits the ground, and it turns Thor back into Don Blake. Then the next page, number 14, I will summarize this one as quickly as possible because it's a lot of convoluted reasons that Don Blake gets a 3D projector from a local studio. He gets this because of his relationship with Tony Stark. And he gets this 3D projector, and because of being an Avenger and knowing Thor and knowing Tony, and he is projecting a image of Thor ahead of him while he's riding a motorcycle. Yes, he has attached a 3D camera to a motorcycle, and he is driving through the streets of New York. It is ridiculous, campy, and kind of awesome. And the Grey Gargoyle is drawn out by the image of Thor. And as we reach the culmination of this chase, Don rides the motorcycle close enough to the harbor, and the image of Thor disappears. And the Grey Gargoyle jumps into the harbor after the illusion of Thor, and he sinks to the bottom. And Don has a really metal and really hardcore line here towards the end where he says, "Well, I guess the Grey Gargoyle finally found the immortality he wanted at the bottom of the sea." Like, yikes, Don, that is dark. That is dark, man. And then the episode wraps up with the rediscovering of Don Blake's courage, and Jane can now believe that Don maybe isn't that bad, and Thor speaks on Don's behalf and gives the Doc some credibility in front of Jane. So we have that little loose end tied up. Eric, anything else from this issue that maybe jumped out to you that you enjoyed? And then we will ask you the most important question in all of Across the Bifrost. Would you read it or would you leave it?
I liked this episode. I liked the ending and the whole Thor has to rebuild Don's image in Jane's eyes because he kind of stepped in it on his own in the last two, with Don acting like a coward so that he could get his cane back 50 times. But
yes.
I thought it was a pretty good issue. The ending, like you said, was pretty interesting. Don jumping the bike into the harbor and crawling out of the harbor himself and kind of reflecting on the
I couldn't help but think that if there would have been a Mighty Thor movie done at the time, that Steve McQueen would have played Don Blake, and he would have jumped that motorcycle into the harbor, and then he would have just gone out and said just some badass line like that. It's very almost like Charles Bronson.
Right.
He's like, well, I guess what he wanted at the bottom of the ocean. It's like, dude, you are too hardcore for this kid's
Put on the
comic.
sunglasses so you can walk away.
Oh my gosh, that's his equivalent of walking away after you like blow up a building or something like that. Don is he's so metal. So that wraps up this issue of Journey into Mystery number 107, entitled "When the Grey Gargoyle Strikes." Eric, would you suggest that listeners read this or leave this?
Of the three of the issues that we covered on this episode, I think this might have been my favorite.
Okay.
Just because it was so off the wall.
Absolutely.
And everybody wants to read first appearances, right? Grey Gargoyle may not be at the top of your list, but it's a good first appearance episode, and they're careful not to say that that he's gone forever at the end there too. So
we've got to expand the rogues gallery somehow,
right? Yep.
And usually, if you're a Thor villain and you get thrown into a harbor or a bay, as the Cobra and Mr. Hyde were in their first appearances, you're probably coming back. You're probably coming back. So, and I know the Grey Gargoyle actually shows up in a handful of issues. So he'll be back sooner rather than later. But Eric, I wanted to say,
he'll find his way back out of the Gulf Stream.
Yeah, he'll float back up. He'll float back up, to shore, and he'll press play on this resumed battle with Thor and Don Blake. So, Eric, I just wanted to say thank you again, man, for joining us tonight. Appreciate you breaking down these 3 issues of Journey into Mystery, and we will see you down the road, good sir.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Always a good time.
That about does it for the show today, everybody. I want to thank you again for joining us aboard the Rainbow Bridge to talk about 3 issues in our throwback series. Want to thank Eric for stopping by. He's always a delight to have on the podcast, especially when we get to talk about the campy Silver Age villains of Thor like Hyde and Cobra, and the first appearance of the Grey Gargoyle, which we did today. It was a lot of fun. If you want to continue the conversation with us, feel free to reach out to us at Mighty Thor Podcast on Instagram, and those of you who are waiting for a Facebook group, we are going to be getting that up in the next week, and I will send out some information probably on next week's episode, and you'll be able to join us, engage with us there. As always, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you're listening to the show, wherever great podcasts can be found. I have been Ryan Doze. You have been an amazing listener, co-adventurer on the Bifrost today. And until we join you again aboard the Rainbow Bridge, I must encourage you to stay worthy.